Hello, welcome to my first My Little Pony review video. I go by Professor Haystacks. I have minimal video editing ability and essentially zero artistic ability. What I do have is an 8-year-old television, a 4-year-old laptop with built-in camera, an American Idol Karaoke Revolution microphone, and I have a PhD in physics, glasses, and a lab coat. Therefore, you should listen to me. We are going to be reviewing the season opener, which is the Crystalling, and I will be pausing and running through just a few bits, during which time I will put the microphone up to the TV speakers because I am bootstrapping this entire deal, which, by the way, is pretty much real science. We have to do this in the lab all the time. Something breaks, we have to cobble together a working instrument with whatever we have lying around. So, early scene here.
This castle looked a lot smaller from the outside.
If you didn't catch that, I'm pretty sure that's a Doctor Who reference. It's also true, the castle has a myriad of hallways and rooms on the inside. But on the outside, it doesn't look significantly larger than Twilight Sparkle's treehouse, but from the previous seasons. Good thing to mention, I will be doing some cutting, which is the one video editing trick I do know. Therefore, you may see some jumps. I'm not moving too much, so hopefully the effect will not be too jarring, but you may see it from time to time.
This castle looked a lot smaller from the outside.
Moving right along.
Morning, Starlight. What? Sorry, Spike. I guess I'm still trying to find my way around. You don't happen to know where the library is, do you? Next door on the left.
Very funny. Also, I note this trope is a slight variant on the TV trope Naked Hello, where someone walks in on someone in the midst of changing. In this case, Spike is actually wearing more clothing in this scene than he typically does, but I suppose it's more the issue of walking in on him while he is in his morning routines. Fuel for the apparently emerging Starlight Glimmer Spike ship. Okay, note here, this is not showing up as well as I was hoping it would, but we have Starlight Glimmer is now in the opening. In this case, yes, this is completely invisible, but I thought I would comment on it. If you could see it, it would be right here. I will eventually get a pointer so that this will be an easier process. But we have now, she is in the opening, and we've got some more ancillary characters that get to gather around that didn't before.
Hey, Twilight, can I ask you something about the Crystal Empire? Huh, funny you should mention it, because I just narrowed your first friendship lesson down to 3 options, and one of them is in the Crystal Empire. Oh, really? I found out that's where the first pony you ever cared about lives. Sunburst?
Alright, note here that Sunburst does not live in Canterlot as one would expect if he were actually a prize student of Celestia from the school. So it's about here I started to think, well, about the only reason I can think of that he never would have contacted Starlight Glimmer, other than that he's a huge jerk, which the show generally doesn't go that way, is that he felt like a failure and that he couldn't face her. I'm actually a bit disappointed in myself for not thinking of that earlier, because I was rather annoyed at him in the previous season finale, where it's like, you know, your problem's really with him, not so much with cutie marks. Anyway, we also see a very dejected Starlight Glimmer here. I do know that feeling, although in my case my fears are generally fully justified, making it a bit trickier to deal with. Moving right along. Spike's posing, always amusing. Alright, I want you to watch this next sequence carefully, because it will be important later on.
When we were fools, Sunburst knew everything there was to know about magic. just what to do. And he was always there to help me.
All right. The important thing to notice there is that he can barely do magic at all. Except for books, he can't manipulate much. She was the one actually performing all of the spells. This indicates a kind of symbiotic relationship here in that he learns the magic and she does it. When they broke off from that, she figured out how to learn magic. As we'll see later, he never really figured out how to do it on his own. Suppose there's some lesson about natural talent and maybe coaches and trainers or something in there. Not really my forte. Alright, so in this next scene, she actually does come out and talk to Twilight. Twilight, meanwhile, is her usual helpful self. I have another comment after it.
Me neither. Actually, Twilight, I am a little worried about meeting Sunburst. Oh, trust me, I know what it's like to see old friends, but I'll be right there to help things along.
I'm pretty sure that's a reference to Amending Fences. Nice little bit of continuity there. Personally, I've only seen Amending Fences once. It actually upset me so much I can't bear to watch it again. But that's a discussion for another day. Moving along.
I didn't know you were meeting us.
Of course I am. It's me, right here. Here I am. Why wouldn't I come meet my sister? Though we haven't met before.
Are you all right?
Never met her. Being a father is amazing and wonderful and amazing and confusing and amazing, but surprising too, you know? I mean, not that you'd know. You wouldn't know, I know. You know?
All right, I like this one, the frazzled new parent. This, if you've ever known anyone who has a new baby, this is pretty much accurate with how they are for a while. Not experienced this myself, but I have some reasonably close friends that this is a pretty accurate depiction.
Is there a statue of you in the Crystal Empire? Because Spike, the brave and glorious, saved all of us from King Sombra, and then again during the Equestrian Games. Really?
Really? Big fan.
When were you gonna tell me about this? Nah, it's no big deal. It most certainly is! That's it! We're not going anywhere until I get the whole story.
Where'd the popcorn come from? Also, this was actually a pretty clever ploy, I have to admit. Starlight's still pretty devious when you get right down to it. She just seems to be hopefully using her deviousness for good instead of evil, as it were.
Princess Worthy Deed!
Yeah, how can you just be born with them? The birth of an alicorn is something Equestria has never seen. It is beyond even our understanding.
Up. And that line has been much publicized, or rather series of lines. As we say, this is a line that launched 1,000 ships in the sense of a reference to Helen of Troy, not in the sense of shipping as it is used in various fandom circles. You'll note it left just enough wiggle room that the writers could say that these two sisters were born alicorns if they really wanted to. Don't know that they will do that, but they left themselves a little wiggle room. Also, despite the books claiming that Cadence was once a Pegasus, the tacit assumption here seems to be that only unicorns can become alicorns, which strikes me as a bit speciesist, or maybe racist. I guess they're technically the same species since they can interbreed. Not entirely certain what that says about their society, but probably something. Yes. She's also now conjured a lawn chair out of nowhere, and is in a pose that I've noticed has already become quite popular with fan art. Also, she has made essentially no progress on that popcorn. Either she started a second bag, or she's just chewing it really, really slowly. Either way.
It's me, Starlight. We used to be friends?
Of course. It's Starlight. My goodness, it's been a long time. What have you been up to?
Me? Oh, some of this, some of that, different stuff. Right now, I'm sort of Twilight Sparkle's new pupil.
The Princess of Friendship?
Yeah, that's actually kind of why I'm here. I mean, I know you're probably very busy.
What do you mean?
Well, I figured after magic school you'd go on to do important wizard work, but...
Oh, no. Yes, yes, that's me, yep. Important wizard. Really busy with lots of, wizarding stuff.
All right, here's where I was fairly certain my theory was correct, that he felt like a failure and couldn't go back to her. Also a good time to point out that, for those of you who didn't notice, Starlight Glimmer used to wear her bangs down, and now they're gathered and combed to one side. I'm not sure why bangs equals evil. I usually just let my bangs fall where they may. But that is the stylistic choice they made here. Oh, this is also a good point to mention. He's in the Crystal Empire for some reason. The most logical reason, given the books we see in the second part, is that he wanted to take advantage of the Crystal Empire library, which would have lain untouched for 1,000 years. Scholars dream. It'd be like the Library of Alexandria, something showing up one day because the doctor time-shifted it or something. But anyway, that is my guess as to why he is there, and he does not seem to have been wasting his time exactly. He has studied a lot, even if he's not sure exactly what to do with all that knowledge, as we will see later.
Well, good to see you.
Maybe we should have skipped highlighting the importance of the meeting after all.
Here we see Spike's learning, but he's still relying an awful lot on Twilight's authority. I mean, I guess he is technically a baby. This leads me to one of the episodes where I was very disappointed that they didn't quite reach a realization, and that's Princess Spike, but I will review that one separately at a later time if I feel like it.
I'm not ready.
Take it easy. Just pick whoever looks the most like honor guard material.
Right.
Crystal ponies, don't know if they dye their hair, if they only recruit those with blue and red hair. Also, Crystal Honor Guard. I mean, that's apparently a thing. So they have their own unique guards, just like Luna and Celestia. Maybe Twilight needs some. For the flashlight shippers, maybe Flash Sentry can fill that role.
Pick the purity crystal, and I know exactly who I want to be our crystaller. So, all we need is...
The baby? We're here! She's a really strong flyer!
So, here we have learned that babies really like Pinkie Pie, and you should not tear them apart because they will destroy buildings. Scare chords. It's a very common musical technique used here. Now we see here a unique ending theme. We'll see later that that happens in the second episode as well. Not sure if that's going to be a trend or not. All right, now I've skipped over all the part about the crystal shattering, etc. I'm sure that's been done to death. Moving along.
So, not only can we not take part in the fabulous ancient ceremony, but we're also about to be frozen solid. Without the Crystal Heart's magical protection, the entire city's about to become a winter wasteland.
But what about when King Sombra ruled the Crystal Empire and the Crystal Heart was missing? The city wasn't covered in snow then.
The heart wasn't missing. It was still in the castle. King Sombra had just hidden it.
I'm afraid Twilight is correct, and the storm clouds are already forming.
Okay, first note here. The weather in the Crystal Empire apparently behaves like the weather in Everfree. It just goes about on its own. This is a suggestion that maybe Equestria is actually the oddball where its weather needs to be controlled. It's possible there's some sort of magical deadening there. Interesting concept. Maybe the Tree of Harmony has something to do with it, although that's in Everfree. So you could construct some Eye of the Storm model with that. Doubt they'll do anything with that, but it is an interesting consideration. We don't really find out if the Griffins and Yaks have controlled weather, but it doesn't seem like they do.
advise it, Rainbow Dash. Those storm clouds are...
Denied. And Rainbow Dash nearly kills herself doing that and is stopped by the princesses. Before we move along, the other potential theory for the uncontrollable weather in the Crystal Empire is that there are Wendigos about. This is not confirmed.
Rock hooks to the floor, Flash Prance's fellowship. But
Here we see 3 more spells that apparently have the power of mind control. Combined with the reform spells mentioned in Keep Calm and Flutter On, and the effects on Luna and potentially Sunset Shimmer of the elements of harmony, we have to wonder the fact that no one seems to find this at all ethically disturbing, that you can apparently just make people be friendly or something. The only possible justification I can come up with is that it functions somewhat like the famous Care Bear stare from Care Bears, where it only works to temporarily alter emotions. In that series, we once saw them use it on Professor Coldheart. It only turned him nice for about 30 seconds. Because it was not his desire to be nice, it didn't actually have a permanent effect. Still a bit disturbing even then that no one actually thinks about the effects of that. Also, he's got a pretty nice cloak there. I wonder if it's at all modeled on Star Swirl the Beardeds.
All else fails, ask them to share an embarrassing moment from their past. Maybe even something they regret.
That actually is a pretty clever idea. Twilight is, quite frankly, usually not that good at her job. But that particular idea is quite brilliant and would have probably worked here. Although the problem, of course, is that people do not like to say embarrassing or shameful things. But honestly, I feel like you get over it after a while. I mean, some point you'll be embarrassed on a stage or, say, in a web video that is made with incredibly cheap production values, and you just kind of learn not to get too embarrassed about it. I just want to pause here for a moment to note that Starlight Glimmer has Spike tied up in the list and completely immobilized. I am sure this is going to be shipping fuel for someone. Wow, the 2 princesses are actually useful. For all their alleged power, it's usually completely worthless. Didn't work against Queen Chrysalis. Didn't work against T-Rex. Yeah, they're usually relatively ineffectual against all the major threats. Didn't even try against King Somber for whatever reason.
I'm the one who said all we needed was this list.
It's not the list.
Meanwhile, back in Canterlot, some random guard gets this list and wonders what it's about.
Spike, or you, or Twilight. I'm the one Sunburst doesn't want to be friends with.
I don't remember him saying he didn't want to be friends.
He didn't have to say it.
Well, Twilight obviously thinks you're worth being friends with, and I do too.
Oh, thanks, Spike.
It's worth pointing out here that Sunburst has no idea what she did, and doesn't really have any reason that she knows for not being friends with her, although this feeling is all too familiar for me.
Fine, I'm not about to just give it up.
Still, when you think about it, the view is just as good a little further back, like inside your house.
the crystalling ceremony is one of our most...
Is this Hayseed Turnip Truck? You may recall he showed up in Ponyville and once in Manhattan for no apparent reason. Those could conceivably be turnips, and he has patches indicating the things he's been to. This probably indicates Nightmare Moon, Princess Twilight's coronation, something to do with the Crystal Empire, some sort of Apple family thing, something to do with the Crystal Heart, I'm guessing. No clue what the others are. We don't really get a good enough look at them. He really gets around. If you've ever read the comics, they have a quite good explanation there. Another point. That is a marvelous mustache. He also looks like he is Mario or something, although his cutie mark appears to be a corkscrew. Also, there's a lot of lawn chairs in the Crystal Empire. That must be a thing with them.
That doesn't matter now. Sunburst and I don't have anything in common anyway. He's a big, important wizard, and I'm relearning everything I ever thought I knew.
Sunburst? I don't recognize the name, but if he's an important wizard, you should bring him here.
Okay, Princess Cadence, if he was an important wizard in your kingdom, why would you not know who he is? They're just giving us more and more hints that he's just some nobody. I don't know that even 6-year-old children wouldn't have picked it up by this point. And I guess maybe Cadence thinks he just moved there. She has been rather occupied with the baby. Terribly cute position there, riding on her back.
Snow? That's not right. The crystal heart.
He's gone! The baby! Shining Armor and Cadence's baby! It's an alicorn!
Really?
He is so excited about that. We see he gets quite excited about any research. Very doctor-like, and a lot of scientists actually are like that.
She destroyed the heart! The Twilight thinks she can fix it because Cadence thought you could help!
Me?
Of course! You're an important wizard in the Crystal Empire. It just makes sense!
Right. You know, I'd like to help. I really would. I just have so much important wizard work to do around here.
At this point, there's no work that could possibly be more important than this. So for the shippers, we see that she is very intent on him, and he is very intent on not disappointing her. For those in favor of this particular ship, I like the word sunlight for it. That's a good bit of fuel right there.
To doing something like that.
But I thought you were an important wizard.
Well, you were wrong, okay? I'm not an important wizard. I'm not even a wizard at all.
Yep. Well, there was the bombshell, as if anyone did not see it coming at this point.
I know it's hard for you to understand, but not all of us end up achieving greatness.
What? Why wouldn't I understand that?
Yeah, she has a severe lack of situational awareness here. He doesn't know anything about what she's been up to at all. All he knows is that she's suddenly the protege of a princess, which actually leads to another rant, but that's for another time.
Yeah, well, reading about magic is one thing, but you don't know what it was like at magic school. To know so much and not be able to do any of it.
Well, you don't know what it was like to be left behind. And then getting so bitter that you steal the cutie marks from an entire village. And then get defeated by Twilight and her friends. So you travel through time to get back at them. But they beat you again and teach you about friendship. But you're so terrified ponies will find out what you did that you can't make any friends.
Did you really travel through time?
I like that bit. That's his takeaway from that. Also, this confirms that most of the Empire doesn't really know what she did, except for the Equalists and maybe a few people in the vicinity of Ponyville. She just kind of vanished after a while and then suddenly reappeared as Twilight's pupil. I suppose at this point, oh, it's something Twilight and her friends did is a pretty valid excuse. Also, I like the way the ponies push up their glasses. Although it seems like that would smudge the lenses after a while.
If I had reached out, you could have helped me at magic school. Did you really travel through time?
See? I told you he'd be impressed.
I'm sorry we lost touch. Maybe if I had reached out, you could have helped me at magic school, and I could have helped you to...
Not become totally evil?
Yeah, but evil is sexy. Seriously, though. Yeah, you know, I feel like about half the blame has to be on her for not writing to him, but we don't actually know if she did or not. We do know he never wrote to her. So it's unclear exactly how much of any of this is his fault and how much is hers. Alright, now this here is the main reason I wanted to do this video. Enough so that I'm going to have to move the camera. It was going to look weird. Now there's another shot of this, which I will cut to in just a moment, although from my perspective I now have to go and rewind. And here's the other view of it. It's not great. I feel like something's being cut off here. But between the two views, you see what is called an orrery, or model of the solar system, with one large central body and at least 3 smaller bodies orbiting it. I believe in the other shot you actually get a look at 5. I remembered seeing this for a long time before realizing when I saw this episode that it was in the next episode preview at one point. The result here is that this is almost certainly a model of the solar system with the sun at the center. You'll note it's so much larger than everything else. This almost definitively solves a mystery that is quite old in the fandom as to whether the solar system is sun-centric or Earth-centric. Now, you can't really tell with the way I've got the TV set, but if I didn't have the brightness turned off, you'd be able to tell that there's a yellow coloration. Hopefully that's not just my TV. And that indicates pretty strongly that the central body is supposed to be the sun. I'm not entirely certain what's going on here. I feel like the edges are being cut off. Anyway, what we then have is that Princess Celestia must rotate the Earth in order to raise the sun. Now, that leads to the question of why would she need to do that? I have a way of addressing that I will get to in a moment. But first I want to point out that in the full shot, if you piece the shots together, there appear to be 5 bodies circling the sun in this orrery. If you recall, way back in the first episode, we saw 4 stars converge behind the moon that released Nightmare Moon. So if one of these is Earth, the other 4 would be the 4 stars that moved behind the moon. As you may know, or may not, depending on where you are in school at this point in time and what classes you've taken, the planets move against the background of fixed stars and were once called wandering stars. In fact, the fact that the planets are moving in different directions in the first episode indicates they have a retrograde orbit, which makes a sun-centric model much more feasible. The ancient debate on our world between geocentric and heliocentric models dealt largely with the matter of retrograde motion, that is, when the planets suddenly seem to reverse the direction they're going. In a geocentric world, you have to construct what are called epicycles, which are circles within the orbit around the Earth. It's a whole mess. We don't see any epicycles here. In order for that retrograde motion we saw in the first episode to exist, the central body must be the sun, because we don't see any epicycles. What's happening in retrograde motion is that the Earth is catching up to these other planets, or they're catching up to the Earth. Thus, they appear to move in the wrong direction until one is past the other. We see what appears to be Saturn here. If I could get the full shot up, which I will attempt to do, there, and I'll put it at the end. There's another large planet, which could be a Jupiter. That means there's one planet that they can't see that we can. The planets visible from Earth with the naked eye are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Here I suspect we have Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, or rather their equivalents. Saturn's ring is pretty unmistakable. Mercury is easy to miss in the glare of the sun, particularly since their sun is controlled. It's entirely possible they just don't have enough opportunities to see Mercury to include it. Anyway, I found this quite exciting. The reason I would propose, and I've actually written a story about this that isn't finished, but I submitted part of it. Anyway, could be that there is a luminiferous ether, or rather magic ether, that exists around the planets. Now, in the real world, the theories of the luminiferous ether are the medium that light travels through. It's pretty much been abandoned as a theory by now. In our world, though, to explain the fact that the planets don't slow down their rotation very much, they do, but it takes billions of years. Or the revolution, ditto. The luminiferous ether could not be viscous. That is, it couldn't be sticky. It couldn't slow the planets down. However, if their magic ether is viscous, it would stop the rotation of the planet, as well. Oh, that did that. As well as stopping the orbit of the moon around the Earth if the Earth's projected ether extends out to the moon. Since we see the moon showing different faces in flashbacks, there's a video that I will link to in the description that mentions that by different author. Then the moon must also be rotating, but it's probably halting in its orbit. My theory would be that in order to rotate the Earth more easily, the princesses latch on to the moon and use it as a counterbalance to twist the Earth around. This would cause the moon to move slightly in the sky from night to night, which would make it have phases, and it could conceivably cause the moon to rotate slightly. Our moon is what's called tidally locked to the planet, so it always presents a single face. Their moon does not appear to be. There's also another discrepancy where the mare and the moon image actually flips between the time we see it in the first episode and Twilight's flashback in Princess Twilight Sparkle. I think that has to be an animation error unless someone tried to free Nightmare Moon in the 1,000 intervening years, because it's literally impossible to produce that reflection by rotation alone. I'm not going to go into the proof of that, but trust me, it's impossible. You'd have to take off the thing and reapply it in order to actually get the pattern to flip like that. The other possibility being that the alicorn potion projects a mirror image for whatever reason. Maybe it's taps into a mirrorverse. At any rate, this viscous ether could conceivably be generated by some sort of mineral contained in the planets. Thus, any solid body in their solar system would have a significant drag on it. However, if the ether does not extend infinitely, that is, if it's only viscous around the solid bodies, because it's generated by some mineral, then the whole blob that comprises the body would still be dragged around the sun by gravity in the normal fashion. But the rotation would be halted. This also explains why they have to raise the sun every time and why the sun seems to just stay put in one place over the course of the day, because the viscous drag from the ether slows the rotation of the planet down very quickly, so the sun doesn't move much from where Celestia puts it. Relatively speaking, she's, as we have explained, actually rotating the planet. The lunar phases are a result of moon light reflecting off the moon. Actually, the mare and the moon pattern glowed faintly back when it was there, so presumably that emitted some sort of light via magic as well. But the lunar phases are caused by the Earth-Moon-Sun positioning. If the Earth is between the Sun and the Moon, you get a full moon. If the Moon is in exactly the right position, you get a lunar eclipse. You get a new moon when it goes Sun, Moon, Earth. And a solar eclipse if the Moon happens to be in an even more precise position. The Earth's moon actually wobbles a bit on its axis. I'm going to assume, because its orbit is controlled, that the moon here does not. The only eclipse we've seen, lunar or solar, was the eclipse in the flashback when Princess Luna first became Nightmare Moon. Honestly, I don't like using the title princess, but it's become standard, so for now I will. Well, I will attempt to put the best view of the orrery I can find at the end of this presentation so that you can see what I'm talking about. I'll have it just hang on there for a little bit. Meantime, let us finish the review of the episode.
Crystalline! Of course!
Here we see what might be called a burst of genius or a flash of inspiration, or brain blast if you're a fan of Jimmy Neutron. Rare in the sciences. Most science proceeds by steady incremental progress. But you do get these occasionally, and it's actually quite cool when you do. Alright, interesting point on the last one. Rainbow Dash got to attempt to bust some clouds, but her wings froze up pretty darn quickly. One assumes that the princesses were using their magical aura to melt the snow slightly, although earlier we did see their wings had some ice forming on it as well, although a bit slower.
I think that's everything.
It looks right to me, but there's only one way to find out.
Baby did this?
I tried putting it back together with...
The spell of relic reconstitution. That won't do it. The crystal heart's been around for millennia. Restoring a relic like this is magic way beyond one spell.
So here we hear that the crystal heart has been around for millennia, plural. That means it predates Nightmare Moon, which we already said, but it predates her by at least 1,000 years. Now, it's possible there's 1,000 years between when the sisters took the throne and when Princess Luna turned into Nightmare Moon. But I think it more likely that the Crystal Heart actually predates their empire. I think maybe the Crystal Empire, or rumors thereof, may have been a reason the Hearthwarming Eve cast came to the area in the first place. And at the very least, it's an intriguing notion.
A little fledgling's forbearance for the parents.
Yeah, now, there's a spell that might be useful in real life. Presumably this spell was intended to work with unicorns, but it seems to work all right with alicorns, given that we don't see any more buildings spontaneously exploding.
You did pretty well.
That look. Also, apparently she got a headband or something in there. Maybe it's just standing out more because she's crystallized.
You would not believe the crazy weather that delayed our train. Came out of nowhere.
But it was all worth it to see this peaceful little angel. Aw, so sweet. Come to your grandmare.
Wow, Twilight's parents actually get lines. Now, someone will probably correct me. I think maybe her mother had lines before, but I don't think her father ever did. Actually, I don't think her mother did either. I mean, they've been there in the background, but this is the first time they've actually gotten to say anything.
Well, I think you're the Crystal Empire's big, important wizard. Whether you like it or not.
I don't know if I'll have time for any wizard.
Blush.
I'm a crystaller now. That's a big responsibility.
So, what exactly was his job before? I mean, how was he making a living? He seemed to be living by himself in the middle of nowhere with no visible source of income. Of course, the same could be said with Moon Dancer, but she was implied to have rich parents, so maybe she was the equivalent of a NEET. He may have been, but it didn't seem like his parents would have been all that rich living where they grew up. So this one's an open question. Maybe he was a librarian. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. Although, it seems like his house is more of a library than the library. I'd also like to point out here that his hair has the genius dishevelment that stems at least partly from Einstein. Partly because sometimes you wind up being in the lab for 16 hours a day, and you don't really have time to bathe or comb your hair. Thankfully, I've not had to do that too much, but it does occur.
What's wrong, Twilight?
I don't know, Spike. I think I have a lot to learn about being a teacher.
What Starlight and Sunburst got over their past and rekindled their friendship.
No thanks to me. I know a lot happened. I just wish I could have given my pupil the attention she deserves.
Well, I know she needed to be put on the right path. So giving her the space to make her own decisions worked pretty well. Isn't that how Celestia taught you?
Yes, and it nearly destroyed Equestria multiple times.
You know, I never thought about it, but I guess it is.
Maybe you're a better teacher than you thought.
And more shipping. Her face just lit up when she saw that. Anyway. Another special ending. Don't know if that's going to be a trend. I believe it has occurred in a few episodes before, though. Maybe someone can tell me if it's occurred in all the season openers. But we didn't get the usual ending theme here, is my point, nor did we in the last episode. Well, that concludes this video review. It was pretty low budget, if I do say so myself. I am hoping to get a better webcam, and maybe I can at least figure out how to capture stuff from the DVR so I can actually intersperse the clips without having to do this. Still cannot draw, so don't be expecting a Pony-Sona, though I do actually have one a friend drew for me, but that's one pose, so I don't think that's really going to work. Well, join me next time if I do one of these again. If you like this, feel free to comment. If you didn't like it and think this sucked, I already know. Until next time. My little pony, something da 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 da. Don't know the words, you are my very best friends. Still have time left, you are my friends.